Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tech SEO podcast. My name is Dan Taylor, and it has been a hot minute, a couple of years worth of minutes to be exact, since we last recorded an episode. But we are back, and as always, we're going to be recording episodes with other people and colleagues from SALT, as well as other technical SEOs from across effectively the SEO universe. Today, I'm joined by Thierry Ngutegure. Hi, Thierry.
Hello, Dan. Thank you so much for having me on and blessing me with your presence.
I kind of guess the elephant in the room here is you're not a technical SEO, but you're on the Tech SEO podcast.
Dun,
Um,
dun, dun.
that's because today, and the breaking story, I guess, that's kind of took us out of hiding and got the podcast back out of the closet and dusted us off, is that around the Google leak. And whilst there's a few things in it which are important for technical SEO, I also feel there's quite a lot which crosses over into your realm here, which is obviously data, digital PR, and helping brands kind of improve across there. So, one thing I kind of want to start off with saying is we are going to be talking about the Google leak, but in a non sensationalist kind of way.
Yeah.
So, the search algorithm and the secrets of Google and all that secret sauce has not leaked. We don't suddenly have all the answers. What we do have, however, is a unprecedented insight into the inner workings, into the inner machine, into the factory of how Google actually may or may not process things and some of its thought processes around things. So this leak is a collection of thousands of internal documents, and we're being honest, having worked with a number of enterprise organizations and having spent a lot of time filtering through the Yandex leak that happened not so long ago, not all large organizations tend to keep their internal documents in the most efficient and up-to-date manner. So there's a lot of what we've got to take from this leak of 2,500 plus documents effectively with a pinch of salt. But there are some things we can kind of get insight to which confirm some of our biases historically and confirm some things, but also things which we can kind of know going forward with a bit more confidence and certainty than we did previously. So I kind of guess for the three things that Thierry and I kind of want to cover over from this leak.
Yes.
These being the suggested use of clickstream data and Chrome traffic as part of their algorithm. The concept wider of more things we've learned around things like site authority, and then also branded search volume and kind of how that has impacted things as well. So kind of getting things off the road with clickstream data usage. So in the leaked documents, they kind of confirmed that clickstream data, which includes Chrome traffic, is used in the search algorithm. Now this contradicts what Google has previously said, that they don't use this. But in reality, it makes sense because this is a very pure, scalable. I'm not saying stretch it as far as clean, but it is pure and scalable in terms of user data, and it can give Google an unbiased opinion of web traffic beyond what people click with and interact on the SERPs. So Thierry, I just want to get your thoughts on this and kind of how this just moves into more of that user experience and that brand experience kind of realm.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a really interesting one because it kind of confirms that they've got a much wider view of kind of post SERP behavior, right? Than they'd previously. Well, I'll say that we previously thought that they previously admitted, right? And what this is kind of telling me, so from a digital PR perspective, this kind of immediately kind of flags to me that it's now more important than ever to make sure that the links you're getting are relevant to you. So they have an extreme understanding of, the brand that has linked to your site. Is it relevant to the topic that you're talking to? Is it relevant to your industry? Is it relevant to your audience? It has an extreme understanding of who those individuals are, what they typically search for, their broad user behavior. And so then it's actually, even more important than ever. And I know there's been a bit of a growing noise around like, newsjacking stories and building links for the sake of buildings, and we're not really that bothered about, you know, where the links are coming from and who is linking to you and what kind of traffic that's driving, and traffic is just traffic for traffic's sake. But clearly not, right? Relevancy is more important than ever, and I think this really kind of signifies that view.
Yeah, I mean, we've long had a belief that rather than chasing what used to be the page rank, but chasing the DA, DR, PR, whatever abbreviation you subscribe to, the relevancy side of it has been more important. It's nice to have that kind of confirmation coming through from this. And I kind of guess from more of a technical perspective as well, those familiar with Bing Webmaster Tools and things like Microsoft Clarity, which I think is a very underrated tool, that tracks things like clickbacks and all user interaction, things like rage clicks. So the data is trackable, the data is measurable at scale, and it can be a pseudo measure of satisfaction. So it makes complete sense that Google would include this as part of the algorithm. I mean, I know with Yandex, they use clicks as part of their algorithm, and they actually have a lot of filtering algorithms around that to prevent click fraud. And I know there's been a lot of discussion in the SEO community around whether or not clicks are used as a ranking factor, yes, no, things like that. So the fact that they're using this data from a browser lends itself to that weight as well. Now, how much this is what weighting factor this has and how weighted that is across different query types, it's yet to be confirmed, but it gives us the notion that we're moving in the right direction with what we're doing anyway.
Yeah, and if user experience has always been something that's paramount to a brand, then you know this is fantastic news and confirmation for whatever strategies you've kind of employed from that perspective. But if that has never really been the case, I think it's definitely something that needs to move up the pecking order for individuals. And as you say, like the weighting is something that we're not privy to. We don't know how it contributes, but we know it does. And so therefore it's definitely something that that people need to kind of be focusing on. And I know there's a couple of cowboys out there when it comes to things like that who think that maybe user experience isn't really paramount. It doesn't really matter as long as you're kind of ranking for that thing. I think this is a nice kind of stick to hit back with, and kind of say no, it really is extremely paramount.
Yeah, and with everything in SEO, regardless of the weighting, it's also very much query and market dependent. The expect, and without wanting to go into things like double EAT, however we're going to phrase this out loud now, but what's required for a local HVAC or plumbing business in terms of user experience, information, etc., is very different to somebody spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on home furniture. It's a different level of purchase. It's a different consideration process. It's a different thought process. So this isn't, again, a broad stroke application. It's everything has to be environment dependent and environment level, I guess.
Yeah, and even from like a user experience, when I'm talking about user experience, I'm talking about like ensuring your content is up to date, relevant, authoritative, actually useful in some way, shape, or form. And even from like a digital PR perspective as well, like there has been a considerable amount of expert commentary put out there by non-experts, right? So now there is a great understanding of from a user's perspective of how they evaluate users. Google's also, as part of this, kind of shown a real understanding of how they quantify what an expert physically looks like. So yeah, there's a lot of tidying up here that has kind of been signaled from Google's perspective. I'm here for it.
I think it's definitely required, because I remember back in the days when they had a Google Plus, and they were, I think, circles within that. This is going back to anyone who can remember Plus and use it frequently. I feel that was a kind of an attempt at understanding authorship and creating the authorship vectors that we used to have, and that unfortunately got heavily gained. Like I remember for people making fake Google Plus profiles of fake authors using faces off Shutterstock and things like that, and creating links and just trying to basically game that system. And it worked for some amount of time. Obviously, Google had to come back to it, and obviously, Google Plus wasn't exactly a Facebook or a Twitter, was it, at that time? So I kind of moved away from that perspective. So, kind of touching on authority, then that kind of segues nicely into the second point we wanted to go over, and that's around a site authority metric. So we know, well, I mean, aging myself, way back when, obviously, we had PageRank. I say obviously, we had PageRank on a page level that we could actually monitor. Google then deprecated the toolbar, presumably because the link industry was just horrendous at the time, with people trying to sell PR 7+ links and things like that, and it just became a color by number game. Obviously, that got replaced by third-party metrics once it was deprecated, and it makes sense that Google still uses PageRank or a form of site authority score internally, because ultimately it has to rank things. If it can't rank things, it can't produce a results page. And if it can't rank things, it can't determine what is better or worse for a user. So there has to be a level of quantitative element in there. So these documents kind of confirm they refer to site authority. So this is obviously very different to the third-party authority tools and not measured in the same way. But it also makes sense because they use the metric to evaluate new pages when a specific page level score is not available, indicating that there is an assessment at domain level. And anecdotally, this makes sense because if you have and this is also why I think a lot of the Chat GPT driven sites of 2023 kind of failed. But you have a domain, you have X number of pages on it, you then produce a phenomenal amount more URLs to the site. You get your freshness boost, you get indexed, your freshness decays, you drop below the quality threshold, you go. It's a relatively straightforward system. We have a good understanding of our system. But when you have that new page, and that new page might sit on a subfolder or it might sit on the root, and Google yet doesn't have a score to allocate it, does it either wait for that score, or does it provide and use data from the domain level and then pass path level scores to that page to determine the level of resources, whether or not to be indexed or not? Because if you think about fast-paced content sites like news websites, if you're publishing articles every 5 minutes or more frequently, and it's a breaking story, it's in Google's interest to be able to quickly process those pieces of content and understand which ones can be presented and which ones will be the most beneficial up front. So this kind of might also explain why in a breaking news cycle, you have a bigger tabloids, you have a bigger news presences more present within Google News during a peak news cycle than you do independent publishers, which might creep up afterwards with more evergreen content.
Yeah. That is a really interesting piece actually that you kind of touched on there, because how it's always been a bit of a contention as to like how we value, high quality sites versus what is a low quality thing. And I know Google kind of mentioned like newsy high quality sites in that leak, kind of signifying that the likes of like the Guardian, the Times, and the Mirror are the kind of what it would deem as high quality. But you are right, in the breaking news story, they would by automatic default be considered as that high quality. Even though actually, let's say I was building links from those sites, the relevance would actually maybe come from those smaller, more independent papers towards my audience over time. So how we then value quality from this perspective, then is it time dependent then? So if in the breaking news cycle, I'll put this to you, Dan, then. So in a breaking news cycle, if I'm trying to build like newsworthy links based on this leak, is it more beneficial for me to go for those large publications right from their get-go, and then my strategy change as time decays and switch to those smaller, independent, more relevant publications to my audience? Or do I go for a longevity play and actually go for quality first? I might not therefore be included in that large, from those larger publications to begin with, but from a longevity perspective, it's relevant to my audience. We've got that kind of content freshness there anyway, because it is a breaking news story. Or is it apples and pears?
I'd probably said apples and pears, because if I mean, just for the sake of people who may get the wrong impression of you, I'm not saying links don't matter. Links do matter.
Yes.
What I'm saying is farmed links and color by number links don't matter. Now, if as a brand, if you have an opportunity to, I'll use the term newsjack, but if you've got the ability to contribute to a current and active piece of news, which is in the public interest and is actively being interested by, and you're relevant to it, and you can be featured and you get a link in The Guardian, in The Telegraph, in something like that, then I think Google understands to a point that those are huge publications and they might not have that direct level of relevancy, but they carry a level of gravitas, and having that link, having that brand mention, having that placement is beneficial. Now, your BAU kind of placements, I mean, if it's smaller industry specific stuff, you should really be just focusing them as kind of like your, like I said, like BAU is probably the best way of phrasing it. It's your business as usual features. It's for, I'm a real business. What can I do to show I'm a real business? What signs of life? What can I do to get in front of? Because this is where you also have, like, objective comes into this. If you're, I don't know, if you sell shoes online, and your target audience are, I know, slightly upper income, 25 to 45. I don't even know if that's a real group. I'm just like plucking acorns out now. They're probably going to be reading GQ. They're probably going to be reading other fashion magazines, which I don't, and because I've now run out of names of them, completely brain fog. But and your target audience might also read the Daily Mail. They also might read the Guardian, but that isn't your target ICP. But as a genuine brand, that's still not a bad thing. Now, if your objective is to get in front of your ICP, all the other metrics go out the window. ICP, ideal customer profile, your target audience. Then you don't really care about the DA, the DR, but whatever website is. You care about opportunities to see, OTS, which is a more traditional PR metric. But you want still that opportunity to build brand and build connections between other brands and other entities and your brand, and build those relationships and have that brand awareness. Because the third part we're going to go on to is around the branded search volume and how that might impact things. So it depends on your kind of play. I think the days where you start an SEO campaign and month one you get a Huffington Post link and everything else, it's all rosy. Then you go down, it's like okay, great, you've got an in with somebody at HuffPost, and other publications also do this. HuffPost it's the BBC disclaimer of other publications are also available.
Exist.
It's like the whole, month one you get the really good links, which are probably low cost, low effort. You have an author profile on, etc. Then it kind of, that's retained billable for like for next year or something like that, because oh my god, we've got HuffPost month one, which is great. But yeah, it depends on that objective, I guess.
No, I definitely agree. And as you say, it kind of segues into this branded search piece, because ultimately Google does have an understanding holistically of, if we've said earlier on, like the importance of like the user experience and brand engagement, and then if it has the ability to therefore quantify what is a good quality and a low quality site, and then on top of that favor brands with a higher branded search volume, it's really kind of built that entity up of not only understanding like the audience's engagement towards a certain brand, but the brand in the realm of the audience's life. And all of that understanding allows it to kind of each one of these metrics to play a different role, within that algorithm, but flex dependent on relevancy towards the audience, right?
And absolutely, and kind of taking it back to what the documentation link kind of says is, and this kind of ties into what a lot of, for me, the flags are around a lot of old style link building stuff. It's just trying to consider the ratio, I guess is probably the best word, of branded search volume to link volume, and the sites with many, many links from many, many different publications, relevancy, yes or no, but a lower than expected branded search volume for that might be flagged as suspicious. Like I remember 10, 12 years ago, there was people in the SEO community with nearly 200,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at like the real I'm gonna say super. I nearly said superstars. I stopped myself. Well,
is that yourself?
Oh, no, heck no. But like the people who like your Rand Fishkins and people like that of the early world, they weren't even at those kind of follow accounts, and I think it's kind of like it was almost like a level of social validity, but applied to brands with this. Like I'm watching a lot of Catfish at the moment because it's wonderful, turn your brain off television, and literally the first 15 minutes of all Catfish episodes, it's this profile has 4 posts, but 100,000 likes. Sorry, 100,000 followers on Instagram. It's like, no, it just you like there's a litmus test, there's a sniff test. Does it fail at yes or no? And the counter argument to this is when a brand launches, it will have funfair, it will have, let's say, fanfare, I should say. It'll do pub press with it, it'll do everything else. But then it's I think more when you have an established company for 2-3 years, probably less, or I don't know, insert your own time frame, I guess, where then you go, oh, I'm going to engage with this SEO agency, and you go from 3 or 4 links a month because of naturally being picked up in stuff, plus whatever the transient internet noise of your scrapers and that gives you, to 20 plus links a month with a varied anchor text profile and also varying levels of third-party metric authority scores. The pattern can be seen. I wrote a guide for travel companies probably 3-4 years ago now, and in the link section I took 50 travel websites who I know were being looked after by an agency, and literally I mapped out the pattern of when third-party tools were picking up links each month. And the end of the second week, middle of the third week of every month, they got links. And the number of times where like say you had a couple of safari companies in there, they were all travel sites, we were being travel guide relevancy. You'd see them co-appearing in random publications and random travel blogs all the time. Like this one article links to both of these. A month later, this other article links to it, and he's like, if I'm picking up this pattern in Excel, Google's picked up this pattern, and then it becomes a case of how much impact are you actually having on performance versus how much correlative impact are you having, and then what is the sustainability of this? Because this level of suspicion, I mean, I think as human nature, if we're suspicious of something for a long time, we don't continue with it without starting to question it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I guess one of the things I really wanted to touch on as well is I totally agree from there is a scratch and sniff test. There is obviously this thing feels wrong, looks wrong, probably is wrong. I can't remember what the saying was. It was like, if it quacks like a duck, flies, that kind of thing, then it probably is a duck.
I'll Google it for you. Carry on.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, it was really interesting that they kind of said that, that it aligns with observations that kind of branded search volume correlates with kind of higher organic rankings, and potentially influencing Google's approach to identifying kind of authoritative sites. And then the point that you made around like, well, if you're a new brand that comes into market with a like unfair share of voice, Like we've seen quite a few of these come to market. So like Liquid Death is a great example of that, right? So they've just like their brand of search volume is like something that we've never seen before, new to market, really kind of made a splash within the scene. But then their ratio of that to sites that kind of like have links towards them is probably quite low initially, because there's almost like a brand play that's maybe occurring at that point for that kind of unfair share of voice and unfair share of like search or share of search in itself. And I wonder how that would play versus what we've kind of talked about as well, where it's like smaller brand search volume, higher link ratio, and how
I think
treated similarly, differently is like
it's got to be differently. I mean, I think the thing with Liquid Death, as an example, and this is kind of why I mentioned startups earlier on, is when you launch something, you have fanfare. But I think it's then the longevity aspect, because, I mean, you know, and as anyone relatively close to me knows, I effectively live under a rock of modern society. Even I've heard of Liquid Death.
Yeah.
So long term, they have built that brand. I think it's the issue when you have. I see this a lot with SaaS companies. SaaS do this repeatedly. They'll launch a new tool or product. They'll launch on G2. They'll have all these little playbooks mapped out, and then they'll just immediately go into the metric play. And it's like, great, you're part of this ecosystem. You're wanting to develop XYZ, but you're not really a brand yet. Whereas Liquid Death kind of just invested in that brand. And they became known. And there's going to be that lag period, because you don't, again, using human intuition, it's got to, something like, we're not suspicious of stuff immediately. We're suspicious of stuff if there's other factors that tell us to be suspicious of something, or previous behaviors and previous experiences. If you're Google, you're going to be used to websites launching all the time, and you're going to be used to websites doing PR and producing things. So you're going to have some sort of mechanism in place to modify how you treat that freshness, how you treat that initial uptake, and almost give it a benefit of doubt. I mean, we know there's like a form of sandbox that Google does use, but I think you can break through that with enough effort, really.
Yeah, I understand what you mean there, in the sense of yes, Liquid Death coming out of the gates absolutely flying, but I guess over time that ratio there should be an equilibrium effect occurring if the right thing is being done. Whereas on the flip side, the abnormal ratio sustained over a larger period of time doesn't pass the scratch and sniff test ultimately. But okay.
No, absolutely. So to kind of finish off this episode and then kind of tie it back on, nice little random fact. So it's, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it probably is a duck. Now, I've gone down a little bit of a Wikipedia rabbit hole on this. I'm not going to lie, whilst we've been kind of talking. So, and I'm going to butcher this. Vaucanson's mechanical duck. In 1738, a French automation maker invented a mechanical duck and accidentally created false abductive reasoning still in use today. So Jacques de Vaucanson was a famous inventor who, and just for everyone's, I've never heard that name said out loud before. So if I have butchered that, I'm sorry to the entire French population for that and language. But the robotic duck would quack, move its head, appear to eat some grain, and then after a short time would discharge a mixture that looked and smelled like duck droppings. And the irony is that while the phrase is often cited, even by leading figures, as abductive reasoning proof, it in fact could be wrong, because a mechanical duck looked like a duck, swam like a duck, and quacked like a duck, but was made of metal and wasn't a duck.
That has to be the title of this episode. Mechanical
No,
duck.
but I also think, weirdly, that level of abductive reasoning can now be applied to this leak. Because whilst this is a collection of internal documents,
There you go.
we know more from it. We know as much from this, additionally, as we now know we don't know. So, whilst this might look like an algorithm leak, it's the internal documents. But yes, this episode is now going to be quite like a duck.
The mechanical duck.
Definitely. And I will stop trying to say Val console. So, on that note, I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe. The video version of this will be going out on the SALT.agency YouTube channel. The audio version you can listen to on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, all your podcasting apps. So please follow us there. If you have any questions for the show, you can send us voice notes by Spotify. I'm going to regret that eventually. I know I am. But thank you very much for listening. I've been Dan Taylor.
And I've been Thierry Ngutegure.
And thank you very much. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.